Whatever happened to that student voted most likely to succeed? Story 1. Studied law, interned at a pretty prestigious law firm, was offered a contract before he even finished his degree, became the youngest non-equity partner in the firm's history, then convinced they give him 2 days off a week to do pro bono/charity lawyer stuff. He's still a limited partner in the original firm, but also runs his own organization that has dozens of lawyers overnight their services to those most in need for pretty much every aspect of law. Married his college girlfriend, has 2 kids, and still makes time to meet up with friends, and has never once boasted about his success. We actually find about his achievements through third parties. If you ever needed help with anything, he'd do everything in his power to do. And to top it all off, the guy can still absolutely dominate the football pitch at 46 years old. Story 2. He really succeeded. Got a full ride to Stanford, graduated with a master's dual degree in chemical engineering and economics, as well as an MBA at Wharton. Got paid outrageously for a lot of hush-hush work for about 15 years, and retained about 7 patents being used by a lot of manufacturing. He retired in his late 30s and looks to just surf all over the world and do philanthropic things as well as doing some entrepreneurial things. Nice guy. Picture a kind of sad-eyed Spicoli type, but incredibly intelligent. Edit. Someone asked how intelligent, so I will relay a little story. The dude was a surfer and actually considered going pro for a while. He was sponsored and everything, so he was always surfing, including before school. So that made him a little weary. So much so, he would routinely be in the back of class snoozing. He was a straight A student, so he got leeway with the teachers simply because they knew he was smart, and he would ace tests. So, why be a dick? Let him sleep. That was until our AP math courses. And we got a new hot shit teacher in because our regular teacher was on a medical leave. So he had a problem with us lazing about including Sleepy Dude. So one day, he writes a problem on the board and decides this is the day to embarrass said dude. Hey, you asleep in the back? Dude snorts and looks up groggily. Yes? Go up and solve this. Dude yawns, squints at the board, walks up, and writes the answer. He starts to turn around and walk back. Teacher looks perplexed and goes, how? Worked it out in my head. Do you need the work written? When he got a no, he walked back, put his head down, and went back to sleep. You would think it was a fluke, but he did that all the time. When people called on him, he would ask for the question again, take a second, and respond correctly. Edit 2. Had a few more questions pop up about him, so I will hit some of them quick. Mom and dad smart? Yeah, his mom and dad were very intelligent. Mom was a whiz with numbers. Dad worked at some think tank that they never got into detail about. Mom came from Caltech, Dad was Ivy League, but never asked which. Nice thing about them, normal parents, Little League, pizza parties, etc. Never seemed to pressure him or anything, always talked to us like adults rather than down to us. Was he smart on everything? No, and that was self-admitted because I asked him. Math, easy science, easier physics, laughably easy. He said things like that kind of rolled around in his head to allow him to calculate it without thinking. He had a mind for numbers. But then he said his weaknesses were things like literature and philosophy and languages. It was interpretation that he sometimes hung up on, like trying to understand what was meant. Didn't prevent him from getting A's, he just had to work more for them. Was he weird, like withdrawn or looked down on others? IMHO, he was pretty normal. Never lorded over his smarts or thought he was above others. Story 3. He grew up and became extremely attractive. He was the kid in class with glasses, braces, and weighed 90 pounds soaking wet. Went to MIT and Harvard, married a beautiful woman, and now is a vice president at JP Morgan in Asia. Nicest guy in the world whose family were refugees and went through a lot of struggles. He 100% deserves everything good in his life. Ate it. Apparently being a VP isn't that successful to some Redditors. I checked his LinkedIn, and he's an executive director now, without giving the full title away. Story 4. I was voted most likely to succeed. I was an ambitious and only slightly above average student in high school, and I think I was voted this superlative because I was highly involved in a student business organization. I was also voted best hair, but that's just bragging rights, LOL. I barely made it through my bachelor's degree with a 2.7 GPA due to struggling with my mental health and the pandemic. And now I'm struggling in a horrible entry-level research position where I'm paid the lowest in my department. Despite being the most senior, the company has terribly high turnover. But my personal life is flourishing, and I consider that to be my true marker of success. I have a wonderful partner who I trust and admire. I love my beautiful home. I have 2 pets I adore, and I have a close circle of creative, funny, open-minded friends. If I compared my life to my peers, I think I'm happier than most. I believe in myself, I feel grounded in my personal values, and I know a terrible, low-paying job does not define my worth. Story 5. She sadly died after she just finished her first year at Harvard. She was traveling in Europe for work. While hiking with her friends, she slipped from a waterfall into a whirlpool at the base and drowned. It came as a huge shock to everyone. That woman was a freaking genius and so kind to everyone. It isn't fair she was taken so soon with so much ahead of her. The world really was a better place with her in it. We still can't get over how she's gone forever and we will never see her again. I always remember how kind she was, and I try to show that same kindness to the people around me. Story 6. When he was about 24, he started a company doing God knows what, sold it in the low 7-figure range several years later. He used some of the proceeds thereof for an app for something or other. I never knew the full story about this. That sold in the upper 7-figure range. Then he invested in some other app, another sale, another 7-figure payday. After that, I don't know the details, but he invested in a bunch of other things, one of which apparently involved Elon Musk. Got even richer and is probably going to retire in the next few years. Even back in high school, he said he wouldn't get married despite being fairly eligible. Fake. He still hasn't gotten married. Story 7. She couldn't get into medical school and eventually flunked out of college. Got knocked up by a townie 10+ years older than her, and now works at the front desk at a law office in the mid-sized city I grew up in. Nice girl, I don't take any joy in her not succeeding, but high school is a blip. It's not the real world. On the flip side, the school troublemaker who always skipped class and got in fights now owns a lucrative custom motorcycle shop in Las Vegas. He's also active in charitable foundations that help bullied kids and helps run programs to get kids interested in trade schools. Story 8. Not the most successful person, but a friend of mine was voted most likely to change the world the year before mine. He got shot in the back of the head while getting off the subway just into his second year of college. He died, naturally. The shooter was an absolute stranger. The guy himself was a bubbly, energetic guy who made you smile and filled you with enthusiasm for whatever you were doing. He was a huge environmentalist, and it's partly BC of him that I decided to try to get a PhD in an environment-related field. Story 9. Most successful kid in school. He became a well-known lawyer in my hometown and opened a law firm. Least successful kid in school. Started a lawn and landscaping business where he undercut the competition and grew his business to the point where they are starting to expand into other states. And he's also very successful. Both of them have advertisement billboards around town as well as run local commercials on TV. The most successful kid ended up representing the least successful kid in court over a contract bidding dispute. With the same district, they both went to school and won the law do-it and contract. Story 10, it was me actually. They were right, I succeeded. I was a gay boy who straddled both the honors class nerds and the drama geeks, but I left my shitty small town in the South and have never looked back. My parents don't even live there anymore. I haven't been back in over 10 years. Went to a regular large university outside my state because I got a scholarship, nowhere crazy prestigious, but I specifically wanted to go to a college no one else from my school was going to, so no one knew who I was. I worked through a lot of the teenage trauma around my sexuality and fell into a great group of mostly queer friends that I'm still close with 20 years later, even though some of us live across the world from one another. Got good grades in that, have built a successful career in finance, moved to LA after college, then NYC, now living in London, paused to get an MBA from a very prestigious institution during that time. I am, to the best of my knowledge, the only person from my small town that lives in the UK. One other person I know of lives in Europe, and we're actually planning to meet up this year. There's still a petty little part of me that wishes I had shown up to my 20-year high school reunion to basically brag to a bunch of mostly terrible backwards people, but I try to rise above. Story 11. We had two, and I was one of them, and I've had a great career as a CEO and COO for various companies, lots of cool adventures around the world for work and play, and a ton of fantastic stories from friends I've made. Most importantly, I've raised an amazing daughter, and I'm about to get married to the most amazing and beautiful woman I've ever met. I feel like I was indeed highly successful. The other one was smarter than me, and one of my coolest friends in HS. She changed her name sophomore year of college, and as I understand, was an escort for a while. Did a little prison time for fraud, and we all lost track of her after that. Story 12. He went on to be a scientist, then went to the top medical school in America, was declared one of the top 10 minds in America, Pretty much rewrote the book on treatment for multiple types of rare, previously deemed untreatable cancers. I'm 33 and he's already retired. He also invented tons of treatment types and medical supplies, and the patents alone have made him extremely wealthy. He does philanthropy work all over the globe in impoverished counties. Invented this solar tractor thing to replace bulls in African countries. Just a bunch of really awesome shit, really. He also likes to party. He has an absolute mansion in the hills out here. His neighbors complained about the noise from his parties, so he bought their mansion for well above what it was worth. Legitimate Great Gatsby parties, LOL. Live entertainment, shows, themed the whole 9 yards. I went to a few of his parties prior to having kids. It was quite the experience. Overall, a really interesting dude, almost seems borderline autistic. DK, if you've ever seen that Joe Rogan podcast with Elon Musk and how fucking awkward it is as they get going. That's him all the time. It's like there's a 5-7 second delay while he processes what you've said and thinks of all possible outcomes before he responds with like 2 or 3 word answers, LOL. Story 13. In high school, we didn't have most likely to succeed, but I did tie for smartest person, and was voted like most likely to become a lawyer and most likely to be president or something along those lines. This was all at my second high school, as I got kicked out of the first one for selling weed. I wasn't a bad kid, just poor, entrepreneurial, and wanted to be cool and have cool things. I was the kid who could skip class, get suspended, or show up high and still ace every test. I could engage in deep intellectual debates with my teachers, and I scored a 32 on my ACT. I was very socially conscious and politically aware for a teen in the late 90s/early 2000s. I read history books, philosophies, physics books, James Baldwin, comic books, sci-fi, encyclopedias, anything I could get my hands on. I listened and made everything except country. My family were huge movie collectors, VHS and DVD. I grew up shifting between lower to middle class multiple times in my young life, and books, music, and movies were my way to explore the world. My dad was a civil engineer, and my mom was a beautician, and it was 6 of us all together. Multiple times in life, we had to live with my grandmother, along with other relatives there too, while my dad dealt with discrimination in the workplace, and my mom got her degree while living above our means to keep us in a good district as much as possible. Even with all that, my parents were the pillar for the extended family. I loved information and learning, but I was a terrible student. Funny enough, my teachers really liked me and would suspend me at the end of each school year for like 2 weeks, where I would have to complete all the work I missed over the year, just so I wouldn't actually fail. I was friends with every clique, but had a tight-knit group of friends and was somehow the class clown, everyone's trusted confidant, and the kid to carry a team project. I was a band kid, debate club, mock trial, and I could freestyle rap like a pro and battle rap with the best of them. I hung out with real gangsters and comic book nerds alike. During summers, I worked as a computer tech, and I also had a gig as an engineer tech at an engineering firm. All of this while I was still in high school. I started college as a pre-law major at a prestigious Jesuit university on a scholarship that I somehow managed to get because of my ACT scores and the fact they had like 5 black students, LOL. But the party life with privileged kids derailed my plans, and I ended up floating between the streets and my parents' home for a few years. I tried starting a record label, which got 1 record deal with Universal before it fizzled out. Next, I moved out of town, working retail at Banana Republic while doing temp tech jobs. Eventually, I turned a temp position into a permanent job for 4 years. I then ran my own tech company. Despite sleeping in my car for a few months while hiding my homelessness and depression and generally not wanting to burden anyone, through sheer determination, I built my business and got my mental health together. For a decade, I thrived in tech consulting and coding for companies and individuals. I modified game systems and phones and built custom tech. I wasn't rich, but I was content, prioritizing people's happiness over profits. I taught myself to invest and did well trading stocks and options trading. When COVID happened, business slowed down, but my past experiences provided me resilience when others seemed to be falling into despair and isolation, and I was able to shift into the corporate world, landing a managerial role at a global tech company training techs to repair and reprogram phones and computer systems, and later secured a better-paying tech position at another well-known global tech giant working on and building all kinds of tech including computers, servers, storage libraries, and other devices for financial, telecom, social media giants, and all kinds of businesses. I married 2 years ago and have a beautiful wife. I welcomed a 16-year-old stepkid, now 18, and had my first biological child at 40. Now, at 41, I own a 10-acre oasis where I spend my days when not traveling for work. I've quit smoking weed to be a better role model for my stepkid, who reminds me a lot of a young me, and I continue coding and building tech projects to keep myself intellectually stimulated. I still read a lot and crave data. I've become a pillar to my extended family. I'm deeply involved in my community, both politically and socially. People are pushing me to run for a local county office in the next election cycle, and who knows, maybe one day I'll actually be in office. But for now, I'm enjoying raising my family and looking forward to whatever adventure comes next. Story 14. I'm a high school teacher, mixed feelings about my career choice, just starting to feel like I have things figured out. Graduated from high school almost 20 years ago, so I'm in my mid-30s now. I still consider myself a driven and creative person, but many of my betting on myself moments and seize the day moments and do more, be more moments have turned out to be monumental failures. Life has kicked my butt a fair amount since high school. I still think I will live a successful life, but the word success has been reframed a few times. I'm genuinely happy with my family and my personal growth, but I often look back on choices I've made between age 18 and now, and consider that I have chosen poorly. Some people say they have no regrets. Everything is a learning experience. That's not me. I've got regrets that I've learned from. Way she goes. Story 15. Born in 95. Public high school with a gifted and talented program. Pretty much everyone in the program was flagged for success. The guy who topped our year also topped med school and is now in training to become a cardiologist. Tilda, 1/3 of our gifted and talented class became doctors. 1/3 are engineers and lawyers, and the other 1/3 are mostly successful in their respective ventures. I was never a contender for the top spots and always felt like I lagged behind a bit. Still kind of do. I am doing my MD now, but did a PhD while my peers did their MDs because I wanted more freedom to pursue my sport. So now I'm still in school, whereas they're all well on their way to specialist doctor training. My husband was one of the top students at his private all-boys school, though. He ended up doing a very selective degree, winning a bunch of awards for best thesis in engineering, highest marks in whatever incomprehensible maths course, etc. He became a management consultant while planning to go into renewable energy. He died of cancer instead.